All right, we are live and direct. You know what I'm saying? Another episode. So we got my dear brother. Really excited about this one. I feel like I say that every time, but I'm excited about all of them because I love history. I love hip hop history. But today we're gonna get into rock dance history. Got a first generation rock dancer all the way from Brooklyn. Goes back to the very beginning. He's going to give us a very unique perspective. The earliest days of rock dance and even before that. So without further ado, I don't want to waste anybody's time. I want to bring my brother on. Richard Domenech. There he is. Yeah.
How you doing, world?
Hey. What's up, brother?
Just trying to spread the word as far as the history of the rock and Brooklyn a little bit. That is always in competition with the Bronx, but just keeping it real.
Yes. Beautiful, man. Beautiful. Well, it's a pleasure to have you on. I know that we've been talking for a while.
Yes.
And we've talked about doing this, so I'm glad we're actually finally being able to do it. So thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for just being a humble brother. You know what I mean? Being a down to earth, just for the cause. You know what I mean? So
Definitely.
I really appreciate you, and I can't wait to get into your story, get into your history. So yeah, man. Before we get into your history, I do want to say that recently, I do know that you've been battling with cancer.
Yes, sir.
And that you have survived. You've beaten it.
Amen.
You survived. And so, is there anything you can, before we get into your history, anything you want to say about that? I just want to say congratulations. You know what I mean? And go ahead.
I think in the military, I work with nuclear weapons, and after the military, I continue to work with in the nuclear industry, and I always joke that I glow in the dark, and I glow in the dark, and now I'm cancer free 10 months. I've got a few new hobbies as far as uh, doing the RV life and mountain biking. So I've been a healthy conscious. I've been a gym rat all my life, and it's the way I learned how to survive in Brooklyn, the hustle.
That's right. Well, that's awesome, bro. Well, like I said, congratulations. We're so happy to have you here with us, and we just praise God. You know what I mean? Praise God for that
Amen.
that victory. And so yeah, bro. Let's get into a bit of your history. If you could start off, I just talking a little bit about. Tell us about you as an individual. You know, where you come from, maybe even where your parents come from. You know, where you were born and raised, and what was that like for
Well,
you?
my parents are from Puerto Rico, Aguadilla and Isabela, which I used to frequent when they were alive. Uh, and from there we moved to Brooklyn, Bushwick. I lived on Bushwick and Monte. I remember Rango playing stickball, Chinese handball, uh, and just living the street life as far as Bushwick. And then from Bushwick, in the early '60s, we moved to the projects, Tompkins projects, which were fairly new at that time, and it was a transition. Um, I was also a I went to I ran away from in Bushwick while living in Bushwick. I ran away from home at 5, and I climbed the fire escapes. So I was already a very highly strung kid that was into all kind of hostility.
Wow.
Yeah, I God was on my side on that situation, and then another scenario I'm thankful to be here still was McCarrion Pool. My father took me to McCarrion Pool at 5, and again I had ants in the pants, and I dove into the deep end, and I don't know how to swim.
Hmm.
And I saw the light, and I got hooked up and brought back. So I'm here to talk about that story.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay. So, so, you were born and raised in Bushwick, correct?
I was born in Bushwick and Greenpoint Hospital, and I grew up in Bushwick, Monte Avenue, and from there to Tompkins Projects.
Okay. And Tompkins Projects, is that where is that at? Where in Brooklyn, should I say?
That's in Bed-Stuy,
That's
do or die. So
okay.
you have Bushwick, which is another part of Brooklyn, and
Hmm.
then Bedford Stuyvesant. You're talking about 5 minutes away from each other.
Right across from Broadway.
Yeah, not too far away. You
Yeah.
have Flushing, and then Best Eye, and Pfizer, and the projects. It was right next. It was local neighborhoods,
Okay.
Tompkins and Bushwick.
Yes, I used to live in Bushwick. I lived there in 2010 to 2014. So I'm pretty familiar with Bushwick area. So, but yeah, so okay, so you're in the streets at a young age, you're
Yes,
saying, right? So, if you don't mind, what year were you born? What year were you born?
I was born in 1957.
Okay,
I'm soon to be 68 years old. Thank you, Lord.
awesome.
And uh, I've been a street. Let me just say, I'm an altar boy slash gangbanger.
Nice,
I went to
nice,
Catholic
nice.
school for 8 years,
Okay.
but I also was doing the thug life on the side. Sorry about that, Lord, but He knows all that already.
That's right.
I'm
That's
born
right.
again, but that's recent.
Amen. Amen.
And but the I've always God has always been in my mind, and He's
Hmm.
led me to try to do the right thing by people, and He's blessed me because of the rock. You know what
That's
my first rock was?
right. Hmm.
I'm a hooper. The
Okay.
my
Okay.
basketball. I was a rocker at 5. I learned how to rock the basketball at 5 years old, and I took it all the way to college basketball. I could have played semi-pro if I wanted to push it.
Awesome. Awesome. That's
So
what's up. That's what's up. Yeah, definitely, man. You know, we're not here to glorify street life, the hustle life, but at the same time, you know, we're telling it like it is. You know, it's we're from the streets. We're born in the streets,
yes,
and we're gonna be honest. You know, be honest about ourselves and about our paths, and so yeah, that's why we're here telling our story. But yeah.
the I used to go to house parties, But the Brooklyn, I moved from Brooklyn to Brentwood in 71, 72. Brentwood, New York, Long Island, New York.
Mm,
Um, but when my father used to work in Long Island, so we used to travel from Bushwick and Tompkins projects to Long Island and the Bronx. So I wasn't just seeing things in my local neighborhood.
got
I
you.
was all over New York City. So
Got you.
I saw a lot of things.
Got you. So that's
Okay.
important. That's important.
Um, so my parents, made sure that my education was correct. So I
Hmm.
always stress knowledge. Knowledge is power.
Right. Right.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And this is part of the education process as far as the rocking. All right. Um, I saw the rock with my mother in Williamsburg when I saw gangbangers in the corner. This is right outside Williamsburg Bridge. And we were walking, and I was holding her hand, and I told her, Ma, eso están peleando ahí. And they were not really fighting. They were mimicking burns, knives, baseball bat, but not with flavor, just primitive drops and
Mm,
burns.
mm. Okay.
And
Okay.
this has got to this is definitely before 67 because I was 10 in 67. Don't ask me who invented what. This is what I saw.
Got you. Now, let me ask you this. You said that these are gangs that you saw doing this fighting the fight dance
Yeah.
simulating fighting, right?
Yep.
And so did you see gangs before this? Did you see gangs?
Always, my brother, always.
Talk to me about some of the first gangs that you ever saw or heard of, even
I
before you
was
saw rock.
let me just say I was a Catholic school kid. So every day was an adventure. Yo, you got a dollar, you got a quarter, because you can't you're a target because your parents got money because they're sending you to Catholic school.
Mhm.
So it was I was running from everybody, my brother, from the Morenos to the Latinos, Italianos, y los judíos.
Nice, nice.
So I was a fast. Put it this way: when I played hoops, the brothers hated me because I stood on the court
Hmm. Got you.
because
Got
of the
you.
speed.
Got you. So do you remember any of the names of the gangs, even
No,
before the rocking?
I I I stood away because I was I was the only gang I remember was the one that was trying to recruit me, the Mad Hatters. And my
Okay.
mother put a kibosh to that because they were from the projects in Tompkins, and she knew the president,
Got
so she wasn't having her boy be a gangbanger.
you.
So
Good. That's what's up.
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Definitely.
So, and my mother was a civil rights, um,
Activist.
how would you say? You ever heard of Shirley Chisholm?
No.
Congresswoman Shirley Chisholm.
Hmm.
Look her up. My mother worked for her collecting signatures for the Census Bureau to justify federal funds for the impoverished communities.
Hmm.
I just want to give a shout out to my mom because, you know,
She
that's
made
love.
it. Yeah. Like you said, she did right. She definitely did right.
Yeah.
So that's
So,
what's up. That's what's up. Okay. So all right. So now you say was this before you're 10 years old, before 1967. So we're talking way back.
oh,
We're
yeah.
talking way back. And this is the first time that you see the burn dance. Now how do you know that they're in the gang? Did they wear colors? They have
Oh, yeah.
vests?
Colors, my brother. Colors were everywhere in Brooklyn.
Mm-hmm.
And, and, I says, yo, mom, we got to cross the street because they're about to get down.
Right. Right.
So
Now did they have
that was
music? Was there music playing or they just
no,
bug
I
it
don't
out?
remember music.
Okay.
No, but the way and then now I live. This is when I lived in Bushwick. Now I live in the projects,
Mhm.
Tompkins Projects. Um, right across the street is PS 33 and PS 297. I'm a hooper, and I play in Tompkins. I play. I play with the brothers. I don't hang out with too many Latinos because I'm hooked. I got a basketball, Jones.
Mhm. Right.
So everywhere I go, I got a basketball, and I'm looking for competition. So I always compete in Tompkins Projects, Sumner, Marcy, and the local yokel. And then I hear music one time, and it's PS 297, and I shoot. I started shooting hoops, and and then they started playing music there, and and there were they were dancing, but it was very how would you say? I would say that was before 67 too.
Okay.
What I remember in 1967 is Lindsay Park.
Hmm.
You know what I'm talking about?
No.
Lindsay Park is in Brook, right next to Bushwick
Okay.
on Flushing.
Okay. Yes.
Okay, that was a major rocking spot.
Yes.
I
Yes.
went to shoot hoops there, and they were playing music, and I'm looking at gangbangers on one side and civilians, on another side. But nobody wanted to get next to the gangbangers because you don't know what's going to happen.
Mm.
But then the that's when I saw the first time that they were trying to get together and blend the gangster style and the freestyle.
Mm. And
That's
this
what I saw. I'm like
you
the
said this was in the
beginnings
park,
of
Lindsay Park.
yeah, yep.
Okay. So you're in
1967.
okay 1967. You're at Lindsay Park and you're
Yeah.
seeing what are you
I
seeing?
saw I saw gangbangers, and then I saw regular people hanging out. I'm shooting hoops and looking at them to see if they're going to get together and burn each other. But they didn't want to associate with the gangbangers because in those days, you burning, you get cut or you get shot. If you
Right.
make fun of somebody, especially a gangbanger, even going to the clubs, you don't know who you're gonna. If you burn the wrong person, you get sliced.
Right. Absolutely. Right.
So, and this is before the clubs. I didn't even start going to the clubs yet. This is
Right.
in the parks.
Right. And you're a little kid, right?
I'm 10 years old.
You're 10 years old and you're watching these older, what are they, probably teenagers
Yeah,
at that time?
yeah, yep. And
Teenagers.
I'm like, I can't. I'm looking at them and I'm looking at their, but I knew that the gangbangers did not have finesse and flavor. That did not happen yet.
Okay.
You know what I'm talking about, Vic?
Yes.
That the not that the evolution the not. It's like mixed martial arts. It's still one dimensional.
Mm. Okay. Okay.
So
So you're okay. So you're saying they don't have flavor. So are they so like they're sloppy? They are
they,
they
they just
drunk, belligerent type
primitive.
of
I call them
style?
primitive. Primitive. They had
Okay.
they had the little Abner boots. I call them they're called MC boots,
MC Boots.
but they call them Timberlines now. We used
Okay.
to call them little Abners.
Okay.
Okay, I used to wear little Abners and Playboys with taps in them in those days.
Taps. What's taps?
Tap dancing.
Oh. Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
tap dancing.
Huh. Okay.
And we were dressed to impress. We were not, you know, the B-boys like Ivan. Ivan was dressed to impress, but some of these B-boys can't dress for nothing.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
True. True.
In,
True.
in those days, it was about dressing to impressing the ladies and rapping to the ladies. You had to have poetic lingo.
Mm,
You can't be
mm.
just dogging the ladies. That's not rap.
Right. 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 So let's go back to the outlaws, right? Let's go back to these outlaws that you're watching. So and like Lindsay Park.
Yeah,
Now you said that there was other people hanging out that weren't outlaws, and
right.
what now were they rocking too in the park with the
They would
outlaws?
do it. They would do freestyle, but you it was let me- it was very intimidating to be in the park with the gangbangers
Right.
because you don't know when they're gonna go off on you.
Mm-hmm.
So you got
Right.
to be careful. To let me give you a for instance. I went dancing to the Broadway Chateau, which is on Broadway and Myrtle. There was a club under the L,
Mm-hmm.
and I would be dancing solo, freestyle, and then people would start circling around me, and I'm like, oh man. For me, it was safer to dance with the ladies because nobody was, trying to intimidate me because
Right.
there was a lot of intimidation.
Right. Right.
With so you burned the wrong person,
It's
it's
problem.
on.
Right. 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 So especially especially the the gangs and the
In the
gangsters.
beginning, yeah.
They're like loose cannons, right? Like you
Yep.
never know when they're
Yeah.
gonna go
I,
off. They might.
I go to Cactus School. I have some type of, you know, I have some respect for people. These guys
Mm,
will shoot you and cut you up and no, and take your
not
money
right.
and keep it moving.
Right. 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 So when you see this dance, it's like a really intimidation thing.
Oh yeah.
I'm sure it was very impressive, but like you said, it was primitive. So not a lot of flavor, style, musicality, none of that. It was just
Just
burning, just
it
burning.
was a replacement. Instead of killing each other, they were burning each other.
Mm, mm,
I mean, that's the way I saw. I'm like, whoa, the language, the lingo is changing here in the street, because it was kill or be killed for a minute,
mm,
and that going to the military was easy because I was already dodging bullets, rapists, and
hmm.
there were, it was a crazy world.
Let me ask you this. Let me ask you this. As far as the gangs go, right? What do you think was the height of the gang activity that you saw in New York? Like, what years was the height of the violence and the infestation of gangs?
I think it's always been a problem, especially the 60s and the 70s. As far as after that, I kind of moved away from the rock and I got into that again, 2000, 99, 2000. I got back into it,
Hmm.
but I was never. I was a wannabe gangbanger, but I was already too conscientious to do that type of lifestyle, even though it affected me because I was a juvenile delinquent for a minute.
Hmm.
But then with good parenting, you kind of clean that up a little bit.
Right, come back around. Okay, so all right, so like you said, the first time you see the gangs burning was in Williamsburg,
Yeah.
Brooklyn, on the
Yep.
street, and you're
Yeah.
like, "What is this? What's going on?"
Yeah.
And then that's when you get a glimpse of what it is. Then you're playing ball at Lindsay Park, and
Yeah.
now you see it up close and personal, right?
Yep.
You see the dance going, them going at the gangsters, really going at it. Um, what happens after that? Do you?
I think I turned 12 or 13, and I went to go to the club, the Orange Peel, and they didn't let me in. And from there, I went to what's the other club? Now I forgot the club. It was my first club. It begins with an R. Um, it'll come to me. But when I went to the first club, it was late 60s, early 70s.
Hmm.
And psychedelic music, psychedelic rock. Um, there was the posters on the wall, the visuals on the wall, the black light,
Hmm.
um, reflection. No, it wasn't reflections. Um,
Like
it'll
the
come to me.
neon glowing lights and all that.
Yeah, Chuck used to go to the club. Bushwick Joe used to go to the club because I spoke to all those guys, and they
Okay.
went to the club too.
Okay.
And
So
that was my
okay.
first club.
So okay. So you turned 12. And now at 12 years old, you want to go to a club.
Yeah,
Now nowadays, that sounds kind of strange because 12-year-olds aren't thinking about clubs today.
yeah,
We
yep,
start thinking about clubs, so at least 16 at
yeah,
18,
yeah. That's
like
crazy. Yeah, that's crazy. Yep.
but back then, now what made you want to go to a club at 12 years old?
The girls, I would go to Delancey Street on Saturdays, and the mamas were all over the place. So I would go, and I would go with my friend. I would go from Tompkins Projects to Orange Peel. Oh man, uh, uh, there was the Orange Peel, Broadway Chateau. Uh, damn, I'm getting a mental block. Sugar Shack. Um, but then I did that in 70, 71,
Uh-huh.
and then I finally got into Orange Peel, and that was a lot more classier, and people were coming from all over New York City to the Orange Peel,
Really?
and that's when I saw um, Rubber Band and Mexico in the early 70s before he got killed.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow. Okay, that's amazing. Okay, before we go there, because we definitely have to talk about that. So, all right. So, these. So first of all, you get rejected at the first time you tried to go to Orange Peel,
Orange Peel. Yep.
right? And now, where was the Orange Peel? Where is that at located? Where was
The Orange Peel was right on Broadway and right across the street from. If do you see the L Broadway Myrtle and Broadway? You know the L right there.
it? Yeah.
And if you look across the street to your right, Orange Peel would be in across the street on the right hand side,
Okay.
across the street from Broadway Chateau.
Okay.
Okay, because Broadway Chateau was under the L, and I could see from Orange Peel Broadway Chateau.
Okay. All right. So it's on Myrtle and Broadway,
Yeah,
right? So now you said
Orange Peel was on Broadway.
okay. So then you said you wanted to meet the ladies, right? And then that's where the ladies was the where the ladies was going to the Orange Peel at that time.
They were going all over all those clubs were hopping,
Okay.
and the dancing was unbelievable, my brother. Oh,
Okay.
everybody was on beat, on point, and and what Brooklyn had over the Bronx was that they had the jerks, which was a more of a power move, and the Bronx were more freestylers. I'm talking about um, 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 Rubber Band and Mexico. Mexico reminded me of Ivan. The reincarnation of Mexico was Ivan because Ivan has freaking dope footwork.
Mm-hmm.
If you ever see Diamond Freestyle, I mean not Diamond, uh, uh,
Ivan.
uh, Ivan.
Yes. Yeah.
But I'm
Fast.
going. I'm like, holy shit! When I first saw Ivan, I'm like, what? Because Mexico was short and stocky like Ivan, and Rubber Band was tall and lanky.
Okay.
Trigueño.
Okay. All right.
But as far as their style, all I knew it was they had a different style, but they were able to burn people with the finesse and flavor. You don't have to do the jerk, and this is what I tell people. If you know how to dance, you can burn people with just finesse and flavor. But the jerk is another a power move.
Yeah.
Okay. Just like um the Russian step and the helicopter
Mm-hmm.
that you showed me on your intro.
Yep. Yep.
I saw that in Broadway Chateau in the early 70s
Nice.
in the rock scene.
Hmm.
And then I told my boy, that looks like the Bronx, because we don't do that in Brooklyn.
Hmm.
And this is like 72, 73.
Okay.
You know.
So
I'm all over the place, so you gotta
no, no, you're
you
good.
gotta rule
No,
me in.
no, yeah, you're perfect. You're perfect. We're talking about the clubs in Brooklyn. We're talking about the
Yeah,
early '70s at this point.
yeah,
You're
yep.
you're a preteen,
I'm still
and
a teenager.
yeah, yeah, you're like a preteen, right? We're talking,
Yeah,
what,
I'm talking
12,
12,
13,
13.
14 maybe
Yep,
tops.
yeah. I
And of
graduated
course,
high school 16 years old.
right. And of course, that's when your hormone starts kicking in, right? This is when you start getting
Oh
like,
man, it was
you know,
crazy, my brother.
you know. So
I I
you're
got
in the
married at 17 years old, and that was a Bronx lady.
okay. Yeah, so you're young, you're trying to get in here, see these ladies, and you come across this amazing dancing, right? And
Yeah,
now all of these clubs that you mentioned, you said they're packed and they're full of dancers, right?
yeah,
So and amazing dancers. Now, out of all these clubs, were they all rocking in there? And
yeah.
and
Rocking salsa, and and the beginning of 73, the two-step hustle.
okay, perfect, perfect.
So
Okay.
that coincides with the Bronx because it happened the same time in the Bronx.
Got you. Got you. Okay. So you're saying you remember in '73, first time seeing the hustle start coming out.
Yeah. Yep.
Nice. Beautiful. Beautiful. Okay. So you got rock, you got hustle, and you got salsa '73.
Oh, that the salsa was already the
Oh yeah.
mambo and the salsa was already very popular.
Okay.
Very popular. That was
So
the main thing. And then I think that was the evolution of all those, the soul, the funk, the rock, the salsa, the mambo, everything.
let me
The
ask you this. Let me ask you this question. I talked to Bushwick Joe a couple times, before he passed, and
yes.
R.I.P. Bushwick Joe. But he told me that he saw a lot of boogaloo, the boogaloo dancing in
Yeah.
the late '70s,
Yeah.
late
The
'60s.
Filipinos.
Can you talk about that? Did you see the boogaloo? Did
Oh
that
yeah, I
influence
was
rock
dancing
at all?
the boogaloo, the twist. Um, uh, that was before before rocking. Yeah, that was like eight, 7, 8, 9. So you're talking 64, 65, 66, most definitely. Bushwick Joe and I we have the very similar background.
Hmm. Yeah,
So we harmonized a lot as far as history.
nice, nice. Okay, now we'll go back a little bit even further, right?
But
Let's talk about.
let me just give Bushwick Joe his honor.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. He was the true essence of what I'm talking about. Okay. Uh, finesse, flavor, uh, on point, um, jerks, and humble human being. He will get the shirt off his back for you. He wanted just to pass the rock on, not the freaking politics, not the lies.
Mm.
And if you talk to Faber, because him and Faber were close, he went, and I was supposed to go with him because we were at the Rock Factory. There was an event at the Rock Factory, and he went to step up your game for Fable, and I hate to say he went to burn the Bronx, and it's documented on YouTube.
It sure is. It sure is.
So
Shout outs to Bushwick Joe,
that's my man. I was
one of my
supposed to go
favorite
with him,
human
and he
beings.
rest in peace.
Yes, absolutely. One of my favorite human beings. Just a beautiful person, amazing rock dancer. Really, what a gem. You know what I mean? What a gem.
Thank you for reaching out to him.
Yeah, man. So, but yeah. So, I want to go to rock and roll. And so I have a theory. They call the dance rock. You know, and you have the jerk, right? Which the jerk was a dance craze across the United States by the Skylarks. Who made a song called "Do the Jerk,"
Wow. Okay.
right? So now
Nice.
it's not the rock jerk. They
No.
did their own little dance, but I feel like the popularity of the term jerk and the dance. Do you think that had anything to influence, or just rock and roll in general, where they had the different social dances that came out? Do you think that all ties into to rock at all?
I think um like the break, going off on the break,
Hmm.
I will rock you is an offshoot of that. When I say I will rock you, if I'm hooping, I'm gonna shake you, or I'm gonna break you.
Hmm.
So whether it be the dance, we're on the same type of lineage as far as going off on someone.
Mm. Got you.
I
Got
mean, that's the way as a kid, you know, I'm gonna rock you.
you. Hmm.
Okay, I'm gonna go off on you.
Right.
Uh, I'm gonna go off on the break. I'm gonna have a out of body experience on this move that I'm gonna put on you.
Right. Right.
I
Right.
mean, is that
That's yeah. So basically, what you're saying, and this is something a lot of people won't say. A lot of OGs won't tell you this, right? That the term rock and the term break, right? It's not. It's just it's a description of what you would do to somebody. You're going off. You're taking it to the next level, what have you, right? And that
yep,
was a slang. That was a street terminology that you guys use for dancing somebody.
yep,
So it wasn't necessarily like it is today, where you have the rock dance, you have break dance, you have. It's just we gonna
no,
rock.
it's all
We
under the
gonna
same umbrella. Yeah,
right,
it's all under the same umbrella. That's why there's a little bit of people don't understand that going off on the beat. That's been going on for a long time.
hmm
It's just the technology is different, and and blending, and I remember blending the music in the mid 70s because I wanted to be a DJ.
mm,
So I would make the break a little longer. So I remember doing that kind of stuff. You know, S- so there's a lot of how would you say spiritual growth. Instead of just going the negative way, you kind of take the negative and develop something positive with it.
right,
So that's what we're doing now with the rock dance, even though it originated from, gang banging, basically, like
right.
like Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. In Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, they have the Apache line in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu too.
Hmm. Hmm.
So that's
Wow,
gang banging in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu too. Those are the roots.
nice, nice. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Okay, so let's get back to this club, right? This club scene in Brooklyn. Now you're saying you got all these local clubs, that are packed with dancers, amazing dancers, all kinds of you know, women are in there. You have good music, salsa, disco starting to come out, the rock music. Um, and now you said the orange pill was the only one. Is that correct? The only one that everybody would come from different boroughs to Brooklyn?
Now, I can't say the only one, but from what I've seen,
Hmm.
it was right. It was right next to the train station, and Manhattan was not too far away.
Hmm.
So, and I would see a lot of the dancers in Manhattan when I would go to Ipanemas, Roseland, and there was a lot of clubs that I would go into Manhattan too after my initial Brooklyn, because I went to the clubs in Brooklyn first before Manhattan.
Nice,
So
nice. Okay,
that that,
so okay,
that
so
was
you
my intro.
okay, so like I said, you started out going to these Brooklyn clubs, and then you venture out on into Manhattan, right? So now before you ventured out, you had already seen. You saw Rubber Band in Mexico in Brooklyn first before you went to Manhattan?
Yes. And
Okay,
then I went to Ipanema, and then I saw them at Ipanema too.
really?
Yeah. Yep.
Talk about
But
that.
there
Talk
was
about
but there was no rocking in Ipanema. No way, Jose,
what do you mean?
because that was a battle dance. That 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 was a Brooklyn thing. You didn't see that in Manhattan.
Okay, okay. So you're
You did,
saying that there was a difference when you went to
yeah.
Brooklyn clubs and when you went to
And
Manhattan.
Ipanema was a multi-million-dollar club. Orange Peel, that was a local yokel club.
Mm,
You know what I'm
okay.
talking about?
Yeah.
When you
Yeah.
start battling with somebody in Ipanema, they're throwing your butt out.
Right. Right. Right.
You know
Right.
what I'm saying?
Yes. Yeah. So that didn't happen at the Orange Peel.
No, it's on at the Orange Peel.
Wow. Wow. So they let you rock and battle and everything at in
Yeah,
Brooklyn
it,
in the
it was from what I saw in the beginning. It was on at all the clubs
wow.
in Brooklyn.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Interesting. Okay, so that's awesome. So it sounds like what you're saying is that Brooklyn had its own style. Um,
I've been saying that for the longest, my brother,
okay.
because I used to travel to the Bronx all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I remember going to a Bronx party. It was me and my best friend. He was my high school best friend, and it was a lesbian party.
Mm-hmm.
That was the last time I went to a lesbian party
Mm.
because the dyke wanted to kick my ass and my friend's ass.
Okay.
I says, "Yo, we gotta go."
All
So
right.
we did the Hoover maneuver and we were out of there. That was the Bronx in the early '70s.
Nice. Nice. Okay. So yeah, so let's talk a little bit about that. I think that's such an important point. You got a different style with Brooklyn. Now they're allowing these burns and these jerks in these battles in the Brooklyn clubs.
Yeah,
Now you said that initially it was the gangs that was doing these burning, but when it comes to this early '70s in the clubs, it wasn't just gangs anymore, right? Now
there
these
was
are
no
just
gangs
regular,
in the clubs. No.
it was
Now I think
regular dancers.
it was the evolution somehow, some way, and this is when Joe knows better, and Chuck probably knows better, because I was already in Long Island, and I was coming from Long Island to Brooklyn. So I was on the outside looking in, but I already saw the evolution of the from the beginning, the primitive style with finesse flavor, and both of them combined now in the early '70s, which was a an art form that was ahead of its time.
Mm,
Let me put those quotes in there. So when I saw that, I'm like, wow. So of course that left a a thought, a lifelong thought as far as the dance in me.
mhm,
And I'm not really, I don't push the dance because I'm a more of a mat rat, gym rat person, But I was a hustler. I used to go to hustle with the French with my Bronx ex-wife and go to Montreal and hustle in the 75, 76, 77. But I was out of the rock by 75.
Got you. Got you. Okay. So all right. So now you're saying now in the Bronx, these guys came and they're just got these finesse, this flavor, this style, this footwork, right? You said they
Footwork.
had amazing footwork. Now, what about floor moves? Did you see them do floor moves, or did you see
That
other
was
people?
more rubber band.
Okay,
Yeah, that was more rubber band. I
okay,
call him Gumby, but
Gumby.
I had a lot of friends that were Gumby. To this day, I have friends that are Gumby because of the Brazilian Jiu Jitsu.
Hmm.
But he was a Gumby style dancer.
What do you mean? Can you break that down? You mean like
Yeah,
flexibility?
flexibility. Um, um,
Some people say double jointed. I think what
yeah,
they mean
double
is
jointed.
flexibility.
Yeah, you know, uh, he was flexible. He would get down low. As far um, uh, um, jerks, I didn't see too many jerks from either one of them.
Got you. Perfect. Okay.
Okay. But as far as finesse and flavor, like my ex-wife, she had buku finesse flavor. She was a
Mhm.
sasera and a hustle dancer.
Right.
So I know the Bronx had, but as far as the way that we rocked was because I used to go into the Bronx and burn, and I would just burn you without jerks.
Right. Right. So, in the intro, you see some of the old salsa dancers doing some floor moves.
Yes,
Was that similar to the type of floor moves that you would see Rubber Band do, or would he
most
do different
most
stuff?
definitely.
Okay. All
Okay,
right.
most definitely.
So you're talking about, the helicopter, the Russian.
Those influences were there. Not just the the salsa. He had the salsa move because he was a great salsa dancer too.
Mhm.
So that's gonna influence his rocking.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Now, speaking of salsa, now would you never heard of a club in Brooklyn called Salsa? The Salsa?
Yeah, I used to go to that club too.
Okay. Now, how was that club? Was that similar to the Orange Peel?
Oh, bro, now you're making my PTSD. I, the orange peel was my favorite
Okay.
because you had three floors, if I'm not mistaken. No, one floor at the. It was the Broadway Chateau that had two. I forget the salsa club. I would go not too often,
Hmm.
but I've been there a few times.
Okay.
Um, all I remember is this is gonna probably upset a lot of people, but I'm gonna put it out there.
Put it out there.
I went to the orange peel. I had my brand new car, a 1977 Oldsmobile Cutlass, and I look across the street and I see. I'm assuming I'm assuming they're Dynasty Rockers because they had like 30 of them outside Broadway Chateau trying to get in.
Mm,
I wasn't going to the club to Broadway Chateau that night.
mm.
'Cause I
Okay.
saw from Orange Peel, and something happened there that night. I don't know what, but you know
Okay. All right.
that's what
So,
I remember.
okay.
That's 1977, and they had the vest at that time.
Nice. Nice. Okay. That's what's up. Now let's go back to the early 70s, right? Now, what about the music or the DJs? Do you remember any of these DJs that played at these clubs? And do you remember any of the music that was played?
I wish I remember the DJs, because there was so many in the parks. There
Mm.
was a lot of DJs in the parks. They were getting the juice from the lamp. Um, I you know I As far as the music, it was Get Ready, which came out in the 60s.
Hmm.
Uh, um, um, Tighten Up, which came out in the 60s.
Yep. Yep.
Blue Eyed Soul.
Hmm.
Um, and I was a DJ, so I had so many records, and I threw all of them away.
Wow.
Yeah, I had so many 45s.
Nice. Nice.
So I used to buy them when I was 15, 16 years old.
Okay. Okay.
And I was in a record pool in 73, 74. DJ record pool.
What record pool was that? How did that work?
That was the first New York City record pool. Paradise something. I forget. Paradise Alley. I forget the name.
Was it Paradise Garage?
Something like that. Yeah.
I think that was this DJ.
And I
His
went to
name
the Loft.
Loft. Hmm.
That was a DJ location. Um, but the Loft was another $1 million spot, like
Really?
Ipanema. Yeah, yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Okay. And what about any other Manhattan clubs? Did you go? What other Manhattan clubs did you go to?
Oh, bro, I went to so many. My favorite was uh, Barney Google.
Barney Google?
Yeah.
What's that?
That was a club right next to. You ever heard the Corso on
No.
86th Street?
Mm-mm.
Okay, it was the Corso, and you walk down. Barney Google's right next door. There was all mob.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And Barney Google's, I saw Average White Band, Millie Riperton, the Tramps. I saw so many live entertainment, and I met so many beautiful women. First class operation.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. Yep.
Now, and you're saying in all of these Manhattan clubs, you didn't see rock. The only rock you saw
No.
was
No.
Impanema, right? With Rubber Band, but
Yeah,
they
but
wasn't battling. They
you
wasn't
can't
battling.
you can't battle dance in
No,
these $1 million clubs because they'll throw you right out.
right. So there was more freestyle. Were they freestyling though?
Yeah, freestyling.
Yeah.
Yep. And you're dancing with the ladies. You're trying to rap to the ladies. To,
Hmm.
you
Did you
know.
ever did you ever see any contests, any rock either in Brooklyn or Manhattan? Well, you already said in Manhattan they wasn't battling, but did you ever see any
Um,
contests?
I know there was some at Starship,
Okay.
and that's when Sam. Let me just give you a story about Sam Lugo.
Okay.
I saw Sam Lugo at the Broadway Chateau around I don't 74, 75, and I'm a wanna be gangbanger, and I'm like, yo, what is this white dude doing in my neighborhood?
Okay.
Because I thought Sam was Blanquito.
Hmm.
And then he pulled out a jerk. I'm like, oh, the brother got some skills. So I left him alone.
Nice, nice. That's what's up. That's what's up. Shout
You
out
know?
to Sam Lugo.
You know who Sam Lugo is, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay. He was part of the beginning rock movement, and then his ego got kind of checked a little bit,
Hmm.
and he kind of just fell off the the whole map.
Right, right. But shout outs to Sam Lugo, amazing dancer, and he definitely dropped some gems went on us when he was around.
Who's that?
Sam Lugo,
Definitely a fantastic dancer. Uh, he is very highly intelligent human being.
absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, and
Hmm.
I love him to death, but that was his detriment because he
Right,
would took down to people.
right,
I
right.
said, "Yo, bro, you gotta check that ego. I know you came out of the ghetto. That's why your butt was getting kicked on a regular."
Okay. So all right, so all right, so you said now you said you're out. You're now. I just want to revisit this one point before we move on, and that is with the floor moves. Now, when it comes to breaking, right, hip hop, the looping of the break, that Cool Herc, and all of this Bronx narrative, right? You're coming from a Brooklyn perspective. Now, you saw floor moves. Um, you saw DJs mixing, right? But
Yes.
would you consider that hip hop, or would you say that the Bronx had their own uh, twist on it that made it kind of like hip hop when the b-boying came out, the and the breaks, the looping of the breaks and all that?
I always considered the down rocking a Bronx thing. The
Okay,
up rocking was a Brooklyn thing.
got you, got you.
That's just my own observation of many, many years of going into the Bronx.
Mm-hmm.
I give them the b-boying 110%. The going off is very similar whether you rock on top or on the bottom, but the 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 I think the separate lanes, but the ultimate goal. You want to be able to do like MMA, the
Mm-hmm.
top and the bottom.
Yes, yes. Now let me ask you this: would you say that Rubber Band, with his floor moves and his popularity, would you venture to say that he had something to do with the early beginnings, the prototype of breaking in the Bronx, being that
Woo!
he's from the Bronx?
Hmm. Let me just that's a touchy subject because to me this is a New York City thing.
Hmm.
I think you cannot really say where it all began. That's why I mentioned that in the beginning. I
Hmm.
think you had different hoods, different flavors, and different innovations everywhere.
Hmm.
Okay, but when it comes to street life, you have you have underprivileged people that will search for light at the end of the tunnel, and they're looking for something. I don't know what, could be God, could be rock, could be, for me it was God, basketball, and trying to not get killed.
Hmm. Right.
So, but the rock, as far as um to me and b-boying, I think that's a New York City thing. That's just me. Bronx put it on the map, just like RC put the uh the up rocket to a certain degree on the map
Right.
again.
Right. Absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely.
I don't want to deny him his 2 cents because politics is politics,
Hmm.
but I always check the ego at the freaking door.
Got you. Got you. Very well said. Appreciate that answer. And you're absolutely right. It is very difficult to try to pinpoint in the origins of anything, because when something something comes around, like hip hop, culture or breaking. There's so many different influences that go into it. So many different narratives, so many different stories. Everybody has a part to play in it. So I appreciate that answer and humbleness. You know what I mean, to recognize that. So yeah.
But let me give you your due too, because when I saw the uh, the helicopter and the floor and the Russian step in Brooklyn, I told my boy that's a Bronx thing,
Hmm. Right.
and this is before '73.
Right. Nice. Nice. That's what's up.
So
That's what's up. Shout out to Wade Lewis. He is the founder of the Shaka Zulus from Bronx River.
wow.
So he's on.
And I rocked at the Bronx River a long time ago with my first wife because she used to party there.
Nice. Nice. That's what's up. Now
Not
you said. You said that she was from She was from the Bronx, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Got you. Got you. That's what's up. That's what's
Wow.
up. Yeah, man. So all right. So that's cool. If anybody, I know we got a couple of viewers in here. Anybody have any questions for Brother Richard about rock, about Brooklyn,
My
about
first rock is the b-ball. I just got to put that out there.
that's what's up. That's what's up. That's what's up. Now let's move on. Let's move on forward, maybe to the '80s and into the '90s, right?
Okay.
Now I know you went to you said you went into the military. Is that correct?
Yes. I
Okay.
went. I I graduated high school. Let me just go back a little bit to give you my uh remember the boy that I went with to the lesbian party?
Mm-hmm.
Well, his father it was Jamaican numbers guy.
Okay.
He brought Shabadoo to his house in Brentwood, and that's how I met Shabadoo. He
Really?
uh my best friend was Jamaican. His
Mm-hmm.
father was Jamaican mob. I don't know what he did. He ran numbers. I don't get involved. I know he had money.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And he bought Shabadoo and we shot pool, we party, and I Q&A him because I came from the rocking in Brooklyn.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So
What year was this?
this has gotta be 72, 73 when
Wow.
he first became a soul train dancer.
Oh my goodness. That's amazing. So you met Shabadoo way back then.
Yeah. Yep.
And
He
now,
was he's maybe a year or 2 years older than I am, and I'm 68. He passed away a couple of years ago.
yeah.
He was in his 70s.
Wow. That is crazy. That's crazy. Now, what did he have to say about rock? Did you speak to him about rock, or did he speak to you
Oh
about
yeah.
rock?
I I I later on, okay. No, let me just go back to when I met him. I'm like, yo, you because he was dressed like a locker. I'm like, to me that was kind of, I'm dressed to impress in Brooklyn. We got a different flavor,
Right, of
you
course.
know. So he
They,
looked to me like a clown. I'm like, yo, you know,
right, right. Yeah.
you're supposed to be a professional dancer. Let me see what you got.
Hmm.
And I was like, yo, he did he started locking.
Hmm.
I'm like, damn, that's nice. Okay. And then he started he did the robot.
Hmm.
And then he did the freaking moonwalk.
Right, right. Okay,
Okay.
that's what's up.
And I was like, yo, not okay, you're the real deal. And then I really don't remember too much after that because we partied.
Yeah.
Okay. But then I got to reintroduce myself again on Facebook.
Oh,
Okay. And I said, do you remember when you and I met? He says, yeah. Okay. And then I started Q&A him about The Rock.
wow. That's what's
Okay.
up. That's what's up.
And then he told me about that he competed against the Brooklyn Rockers. It was the Lockers versus the Rockers in 1975 in the Grand Ballroom, and it was fantastic. He had an unbelievable time,
Wow. I have
and he
never,
lived in Brooklyn for a minute.
wow. I have never heard that story ever.
And guess who knows him? Your
Pop,
prez.
Papa, yeah, I know. Papa Love.
So
Papa
I'm
Love is
like,
good
yo,
friends.
Papa, God made this happen, right?
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah.
So Shabadoo's looking at it, even though he's Jehovah, he's looking
Mhm.
down on us.
That's what's up. Shout out to Shawadu, rest in peace. He
May
was
he rest in
I never
peace, my
met him,
friend.
but I heard he was a great, great dude and definitely a hip hop or street dance legend. No
Oh,
doubt about it.
without a doubt. And he's first generation locker. I'm a
Yes,
first
yes,
generation rocker.
right. That's
So
amazing.
this is history.
Right. That's dope. That's dope. So he said that the Rockers versus the Lockers in 1975. All right.
Wow. And this is the first time I've made this. The only other person I mentioned this was Joe, Papo 774,
Mm-hmm.
Wigs.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Wow.
I turned wigs on to Shabadoo in a private message.
Nice. That's what's up. All right. So now going to into the 80s and the 90s, right? Did you see hip hop? You see breaking, rocking. How'd you
Uh,
feel about it?
um, hmm. I've always in the and I would say the 80s. I always had it in the back of my mind. It was still underground, and I taught. I don't know if I showed you my kickboxing class, but
Yeah.
I because of the rocking, I taught a kickboxing class 130 beats per minute for 20 years straight,
Wow.
every day,
Hmm.
almost every day myself because I had to hire other people because I'm getting old. But
Nice.
I had a class like that for 20 years. And I says, that's it, ladies. I'm done. I'm retired. No, and they still want me to teach that class.
Nice.
Why? You ever see Tybo?
Uh
I will blow that class away
huh.
because I'm rocking on beat, and you got to stay on beat. And I'm doing routines, elbow, elbow, knee, but everything's on beat like you're supposed to be on when you rock.
Right. Right.
So
Mm-hmm.
my class was a cardio kickboxing class, but you have to be on beat. There's no two step. You on your toes for at least half an hour.
Nice. Nice.
So I'll send you a video of that.
Okay. All right. So now we get into the 90s, 2000s, right? Now you come back into the scene at some point. Like, can you talk about how you got reconnected to the hip hop scene, the breaking, the rocking? And now I
Okay.
know you had an involvement with the b boy Ivan
Yeah.
from
Okay.
California. Can
I'll
you
leave
talk
it to
about
that
that?
right now.
Hmm.
Okay. We taught. I, I had a school. It was called Black Belt Academy for 27 years. Okay. And within that school, we taught Wing Chun. And the Wing Chun instructor was also a Bushwick guy.
Okay.
Sifu Chow is his name. And
Okay.
he's Puerto Rican, but he looks Oriental. And one of his students was B-Boy Logic. And
Okay.
I'm over here doing a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu move. It looks like a windmill. It's called the pendulum sweep.
Okay.
So it's when somebody's on top of you and you sweep them and you get on top of them.
Got you.
Okay. And then I go, it's like breakdancing. And that caught his ear.
Mm,
And I didn't know him. All I knew that he would go into the back to uh to learn kung fu, Wing Chun kung fu.
mm-hmm.
Well, I'm like, yo, do you know how to burn, how to Brooklyn rock? Yeah. He was taught by RC.
Really
Yeah. And the man's a burner. If you look at
nice.
some of my videos,
Mhm.
with Ivan and the boy headed guy, that's logic.
Okay.
Okay. But there was always conflict, because you got a professional B-boy and you have a hobby B-boy, not a hobby B-boy, but a local yokel B-boy.
Right.
So there's always a little bit of competition.
Hmm.
So me, I'm the mediator of everybody.
Got you.
But so he goes and I says, um, uh, yo, do you know this guy? because I was looking at, I was looking at Ivan on YouTube. I'm like, damn, he a freak.
Mm-hmm.
So all of a sudden, one day, Logic comes in, and then he goes, "I want you to introduce yourself." I'm like, "Oh, okay." I thought he was an MMA fighter because he Diesel.
Yeah.
And he goes, "Hi, my name is Ivan," with a squeaky voice. "My name is Ivan." I'm like, "Oh!" So I was shocked, because the man can fly a little bit. You know what I'm saying?
So
And he's
you
a
you
West Coast, he's a West Coast legend.
right, right. So you already seen Ivan on the internet and on
Yeah,
video,
for
right?
b-boying
For
because
b-boying, and then
that was
all
yeah,
and
because
all of a sudden he walks into your studio.
he was one of the top b-boys in the world.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And so he walks into your studio in Brooklyn, right?
No, in Ronkonkoma.
Where's that?
You got to remember, I've had Ivan, I've had Seven Gems,
Hmm.
I've had uh, I've had a few crews at my school.
Where's that at? Where's that at?
Ronkonkoma is in Suffolk County, Long Island.
Okay,
Uh, I've even had Gary, white boy Gary, rock
okay.
with my kids.
That's what's up. That's what's up. Shout out to White Boy Gary.
So, you know, he spreads. I got mad love for him. You know, and anybody that promotes, and checks the ego because, come on, we're getting old. The clock is ticking. Spread the wealth. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I made so much money just because of the rock.
Mm,
Okay, and I'm not tooting my horn, but you got to pay your taxes. That's all I
right.
want to say about that.
Well, let me say. So let me say this, and I know we've been on here for an hour and 12 minutes already.
Wow.
It's flown by. But wow, what interesting and amazing history here. But I wanted to ask you, since you brought it up, talk to a little bit about, because we said before, Bushwick Joe was a really humble brother who never gave into the politics. He never gave, he never gave a rat's behind about talking crap about the next man, right? He only cared about rock and spreading love. You know what I
Amen.
mean? And so, what message do you have as an OG, a first generation rocker, to the younger generation, and even to the older generation, the OGs? What message do you have? What can you say to them as far as rock dance?
Wow. I'm I've been blessed to be here by God to show me light, and the hustle is real. If the sometimes you have nothing, just yourself to reflect and build upon, especially from within, to be all that you can be. Self actualization. That's what I learned from the School of Hard Knocks. And my father, he was a Korean War vet. So not that I'm promoting punishment, but there's a price to pay, and right now it's a price to educate the young and the future generations to come, and we learn from the School of Hard Knocks so the future will not suffer, and learn from our mistakes to keep on moving in a positive way and build upon. The dance came from the street, but it doesn't have to be ghetto.
Hmm. Nice, nice. That's what's up. Okay, and let's see here. One second.
Wow, that time flew by quick.
Yeah, it did. That's what's up. Yeah. If anybody has any last questions here before we wrap up, and I'm just going to ask you, if somebody wants to get a hold of you, how can they reach you? And also, what are you up to nowadays? Like we said in the beginning, you just recently you're 10 months free from cancer. Praise God. And so, what are you up to nowadays? And how can someone reach you if they want to get a hold of you, ask you some more questions, or get some knowledge?
I teach Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, mixed martial arts. I would love to promote The Rock. I like what BVD and Mo and Vic are doing as far as the dance. They're keeping it less political, just dance. Leave it on the floor, hardcore.
Right.
Um,
Yes.
and if you want to learn, there's plenty of OGs. Hopefully, they check their ego. Um, but Logic is very knowledgeable. B-Boy Logic. Um, if you could get ever hold of White Boy Gary, he's another knowledgeable person, original Dynasty rocker, and I'll leave it at that. We've talked a lot about politics, but that's our one-to-one face thing. I don't do internet politics. That's not me. I like facial.
Word. That's what's up. That's what's up. All right, cool, man. Well, listen, bro, I really appreciate your time. Once again, thank you for your humbleness, for your willingness to share.
Thank you
You have
for sharing and educating the masses.
appreciate it, brother. And yeah, man, we'll stay connected. And hopefully, when I come to New York, hopefully we'll meet up and we'll connect. All right, brother?
Right till you drop. 1967 BK.
That's it all day.
Peace.
Peace, brother. Thank you.
Thank you.
Catch you next time. Peace.
All righty.